In this episode, I get to speak with Tony Sipp, a true paralegal advocate with his heart in the right place. He has placed himself in rooms paralegals dream of. As the co-host of the Paralegal Voice from the Legal Talk Network and frontliner of NALA, he is a true visionary. Listen in for more. Before we get into this episode, we would like to thank our Season 4 sponsor, Affirm Investigative Solutions, your go-to litigation support company. Without them, we would not be able to keep upgrading and integrating new concepts to this growing podcast. If you would like to take your support further, feel free to hit the support button on our Let's Talk Paralegal website so we can continue providing quality and empowering content for you and all our listeners. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. Today I have Tony Sipp. He is actually the newer, I want to say, co-host of the Paralegal Voice, which we were talking about before we recorded. If you guys don't know about Paralegal Voice, they are a part of the Legal Talk Network, which is one of the biggest networks out there when it comes to providing legal professionals and sometimes laypersons here and there, but mostly for legal professionals to really get their education on and really learn about conversations that are happening out there. And we actually met through a mutual friend. And I've been following the Paralegal Network. When I first started opening up the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast, I actually looked at the the Paralegal Voice, and I was listening to a few of those episodes to kind of get a gist of kind of what I wanted my podcast to look like. And then Tony told me today about something, which I'll let him tell you that part of the story. But without further ado, Tony, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you on here. I love your dynamic. I obviously listened to the podcast. I was so excited when you were introduced as a new co-host. I was like, yes, they got the person. They needed something fresh and new, and I love it. I love you as the person and what you actually bring to the podcast. So introduce yourself, tell the audience who you are a little bit, even though I gave you this long introduction, but I loved it. I'm excited for those of you that can't see.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. So my name is Tony Sipp. I'm the paralegal manager at Manning and Cass. I manage 7 offices, all the paralegals in all 7 offices nationwide. I enjoy what I do. I love developing, strengthening paralegals and lifting them up so that they can be a better paralegal in the field. And I have attended several different events. I'm a moderator, a panelist. Again, I love what I do and people see it. And I consider myself a servant leader, and I just want people to thrive and not just survive. So whatever I can do to that extent, and build up my community as well, or the firm as well, I'm going to do that. The funny thing about Edna, I said it wrong. I'm so sorry. Let me cut that out and bring it back. The great thing I had learned before I was on the Paralegal Voice podcast was that, well, I listened to your show, actually doing some research before getting on this show. Actually, even before doing the podcast, I was listening to you. And I was like, this person has a lot of energy, a lot of positive energy. Like, who doesn't want to be around her? And you have an entrepreneurial spirit, and you've developed this empire, really, by yourself. So I applaud you for that, first of all, because that's I know how hard it is just to do the podcast, but you're doing everything. So kudos.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And guys, I promise this was not planned. We literally just found about this like 2 seconds ago before I record. So, it was so cool because I was telling him about my experience, and then he told me about his, and it just happened. So here we are on the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast, uniting forces. But thank you for your kind words. Thank you for the feedback, because I'm always open, to listening to what other people have to say. Am I on the right track? Am I bringing the right topics? And
it's working, right? It's
Right.
working organically. I'm very grateful that I have amazing sponsors to support the podcast and amazing guests, right? Because I'm not always on my own, right? I
No.
do bring on a lot of guests, and I try to bring as diverse, which I think this is a great segue
Yes.
to
Yes.
our one of our topics today. And again, that happened organically, to diversity, right? And
Yes.
inclusion, which is a topic, I don't know. It's funny because for me, it was a topic that was always important. But then all of a sudden, COVID came along, and corporations started tumbling, or revamping or pivoting or remarketing themselves. And then
Right.
it became a huge deal, right? And then it
Right.
became something that should be the heartbeat of the company, should always be at the forefront. And, you hear all the commercials and you hear all the ads. But I mean, hello, this is
Yeah.
something, this is a battle that all of us, especially minorities, right? Me
Yes.
as a
Yes.
Latina,
Yeah.
have always battled, right? We've always
Yeah.
battled this. And I always had this thing that I never understood, that if I speak two languages, why am I not paid double? Right? Like,
Right. No,
right?
it's a
Because
benefit.
I can service both. And so
Exactly.
it's always been a topic. It was always been a pet peeve of mine, right? That it has not been a topic that is in every single conversation, right? Representation does matter,
Yes.
regardless of what side of the spectrum, what religious background you're from, what country you originate from. Representation does matter, and I believe that a lot of movies have pushed this.
Yes.
A lot of actors in Hollywood have pushed for this. Equal pay. It doesn't stop at,
It doesn't
your
stop.
culture, your ethnicity.
Yeah.
It starts at your wallet, is really what I always say, and your education and everything
Right.
else that comes with that, and your validation and your worth. That's really what it is. We're not trying to put people in a box, right? Because I'm all about out of the box thinking. But I feel like this is a topic that should always be spoken about, and I'm very, very happy that you would be our first guest bringing this and introducing it to the podcast. So tell us a little bit about your insight and what you see, because as you said, you manage a lot of paralegals, right? So obviously this is something that you deal with on a day-to-day as well.
Yeah, it's very true. If you think about it, I'm a black male paralegal manager. I mean, you don't see them every day. So it's important to me. And fortunately, I have the ability to hire people. And guess what I'm doing? I'm hiring diverse people, educated, capable of doing the job, but making it more diverse. And so if you look at across our offices at the paralegals, it's diverse. It's diverse. And I'm fortunate to be in a position that I'm able to do that, and that the firm is allowing me to do that as well, because their goal is the same goal that I have, to have more diversity in the field. And we actually won some awards
Oh, wow.
regarding DEI and B and A. So for those that don't know, diversity, equity, inclusion. B is for belonging. A is for accessibility. In fact, I'm going to be doing a webinar November 8th with the New York City Paralegal Association on that very topic, this very topic. So if you're around, go look them up, check it out. But COVID, as you mentioned, really pointed out the lack of equity and diversity in our field, in our community, because the vaccines were being rolled out to the people who could afford it. And in my community here in Los Angeles, it was just a dramatic disparity. Those with lower income did not have the accessibility to the vaccines. And it was a real issue. In fact, I was watching TV one night, and the city of Los Angeles, the district attorney's office, rolled out a program to have attorneys do pro bono work for the community so that they could have equal access to justice.
Yeah.
I saw that, and because they were contacting attorneys, and I'm like, well, they're doing pro bono work, and at that time I was the president of the Los Angeles Paralegal Association, and I'm like, what better way to merge the two? they want to do pro bono work. Those who didn't have experience can now get experience. So I reached out to the city and said, hey, let's partner up, and they were all for it. To my pleasant surprise, they're all for it. So we started to try to roll out some things. That's when PPP was rolling out and getting those applications in. So it was a great moment. In fact, I got an award from NALA for my efforts to get that going. So I'm really excited about that. But diversity, equity, inclusion is super important. And it's not just, as you mentioned, in the legal field, it's in medicine, it's in technology, it's in everything. There's a lot of people who don't have access to things they otherwise should have access to. So it's really just something that's really near and dear to me. I mean, if you can imagine, just growing up as a Black man in America, I'm looked at differently, right? And I have a lot of people that I think of it like if you've ever seen the Black Panther.
Yeah, hello. That's my son's favorite. He loves the Black Panther.
So
he loved the second one more than the first one, though.
I understand.
When he found out that it was filmed in Puerto Rico, he's like, "That's our island, mommy. That's our island." So I was like, "Yes, baby, that's our island."
Yeah, but he gets hit, right? He gets hit with all this energy. His sister created the suit. It starts turning purple with vibranium. But instead of taking that energy and redirecting it back to the person that just shot at you, I take it as a lift up. Like, this is what I can do for my community. And I'm always volunteering my time for the community, for the paralegal associations, connecting with other paralegals, like even you. Like, I mean, that's what we do. We all support each other. At least we should. And I try to raise people of color up, and try to spread the word and try to help wherever I can. If it's using my political skills, my legal skills, whatever I can do to help, I'll do it. So that's kind of the beginning of my path to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Belonging is key, to make sure that you like.
It's a human necessity, right? So according to psychology, humans need the sense of belonging to a community. But from what I was gathering, because I'm actually in the middle of writing a book of legal professional psychology and how our I know and how that affects us as a legal professional, the things that we see day in and day out and things like that. I was reading this really interesting article by a psychologist, and what they mentioned was, I don't want to give it away because I'm actually including it in the book, but what they mentioned was that belonging doesn't necessarily mean like Latinos, right? Like I don't have to belong to fellow Latinos. Like I can belong in Middle Eastern community, in an African American community. Like it has nothing to do with similar ethnicities or similar backgrounds. It has to do with energy. It has to do with, do you make me feel comfortable? Can I be myself around you? And can I be open to what you have to say and be reciprocated, right? So it doesn't matter the color of my skin, the language that I speak, the country that I'm from. Do I feel safe with you, right? Can I put my guard down and be safe and be with you in this room, whether it's virtual or physical? And that to me was mind-blowing, right? Because my whole life I studied sociology as my undergrad, which is what got me into this new endeavor of psychology, and this DEI, and it comes at a perfect time. I thought, I was under the misconception, obviously, that it was, I feel safe with other Latinos, but that's not necessarily true, because as a Puerto Rican, we are like the evil red stepchildren, right? The redheaded stepchildren, which fits perfectly because I'm redhead. But because we are citizens, right? So we don't have to deal with trying to get the green card or the visas. We can literally just take a 2-hour flight to Florida and be fine. But we're still Latino, right? We still speak Spanish. We still have our own culture, and that's what Commonwealth is in a nutshell. However, we're not always welcomed to these so I don't in my case, that has not been the case, where I just don't feel that welcomed. And I'm not saying in every room, because I've been to plenty of Hispanic chambers and business conventions and conferences that I feel very welcome. It has nothing to do with that. I'm talking about in a societal level, right? I'm not talking about conferences or professionalism. Very professional. I've always felt welcome in those rooms, especially when everybody's speaking Spanish and you're in your element, you're just like in your
You're just
element.
comfortable.
Exactly. So but it has nothing to do with that. A great example that I can probably introduce to the podcast listeners, and I probably have never done it before because it just never came up, is the shooting in Florida in Parkland. My niece was part of it. She was in the rooms. Yeah, she was a senior that year. And so Valentine's Day is not the same for us, needless to say. But thankfully she was one of the survivors. She obviously suffered survivor's guilt. But my point to this really sad story is it really brought that community together and the community around it, right? Because Parkland as a city is a very small city, but like Coconut Creek and Margate and all the other ones around it, we really united, in finding the funds and finding counsels for these children that did survive, and counsel for the families of the children that were lost in the shooting. So again, community has nothing to do with color, ethnicity. It has to do with, what do you believe in, right? What is your belief? What do you feel safe in? Who do you feel safe with? And it doesn't stop with a partner, whether it's a business partner or a relationship or whatever it is. It's a community that you can feel at your best. And that's really what, to me anyway, what DEI and inclusion and belonging and accepting and accessibility and everything that we talk about in the podcast in a nutshell, I think that's really what it comes down to. And what I've created the podcast to be. I want this to be a safe space where legal professionals feel comfortable taking these conversations outside the podcast and really sharing it with other people and saying, hey, I heard this amazing podcast. I hope you're saying that. And and it triggered me and I want to talk about it. And how can my law firm benefit from this conversation? How can my career benefit? How can I benefit? How can my colleagues benefit? I'm a firm believer of checking in with your colleagues, with your friends, with your family, even though sometimes we all go into hermit mode, right? We all go into our own little shell, but there's a safe hermit mode, and then there's one that is like discerning, like, okay, what's going on, right? Like, okay, you got to tell me, no, really, what's going on? I know you're not okay. This is not you. Instead of you as a boss, you should know when you see one of your fellow paralegals, maybe their productivity has declined.
Right.
That's a red flag, right? That's a red flag. What's going on? So. What can I do? What are the tools? What can I provide? Do you need this? What's going on? Like that is a perfect opportunity to really introduce empathy. Really, at the end of the day, is really what we're talking about. And I love it. I love that you're such a big advocate in the community, and because I think at first that's who we really are. I could be an entrepreneur, I could be, all the things that you mentioned, and thank you, but at the end of the day, I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate for my community. I'm a supporter for non-lawyers, and I support lawyers in doing that, right? That's really what we do in a nutshell. And so I want the audience to understand that this is not a topic to take lightly. This is not a trend to get on. This is something that has been continuous and that needs to be in the forefront of any business, but especially in the legal, because we are a human to human, right? We are human to human. We're dealing with delicate situations, regardless of what practice of law the firm or you yourself do in your career. Understanding and empathy, customer service. Again, I can't repeat this enough. We are the customer service of the legal industry. Right? I mean, that's plain and simple. Oh my goodness. Anyway, we can go on about this all day, but aside from the customer service and aside from everything that we just talked about, let's talk about new technology, right? And how that is incorporated. Again, COVID, right? I mean, COVID has launched, and I have to say, even though it was a horrible thing that happened to our society worldwide, beautiful things came out of it as well, along with the bad, right? And I think this is one of them. New technology, how to embrace it especially as a non-lawyer, and not to be afraid of it. I don't understand why people are afraid of this. This is the best thing that ever happened since, what is it? Sliced bread. I never
True.
understood that one. I'm still trying to learn that one. I'm sorry. I'm like trilingual. I don't get that one, but everybody keeps saying it, so I'm just gonna say it. So
No,
tell
you're
us a
not
little
wrong.
bit about embracing this new technology and what that means to you, right? Because there's like a variety of definitions, but what does it mean for you and in your world?
Well, I'll go with your example of when the COVID hit, and everybody had to work from home.
Yeah.
Those firms that it had already embraced technology are still here.
Mhm.
Many of the ones that didn't aren't. So it's important that you embrace technology. I used to
Yeah.
work, and I'm not going to name names, but I used to work at a firm that did not embrace it.
Mm.
So what that means to me is like, you know what a war room is. I My office was littered with printouts of email messages to try to decipher what was going on and put it together because they would not use an e-discovery tool.
Wow.
So I came from a past where I was using e-discovery tools, and it made my life easier. And many of the people that now see it, especially when COVID just smacked them, they are now realizing that, yeah, we need to embrace this. And I mean, one of the big things was cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
Because people were, ransomware and all that kind of stuff. But more importantly, the tools that AI and new technology have make you more efficient.
Mhm.
There's a lot of talk. Is AI going to replace the paralegals? No, it won't. It can't.
No.
Um, I use it as a tool to help me better perform in my job, and helping others as well. A lot of the firms that do that, so many are on the forefront. In fact, there's one firm that has utilize AI for their contracts. So it automatically just it merges and it spits out the best. Obviously, an attorney has to review it,
Right.
but that's a business model that they can. I mean, that's global. That's global. You can use that everywhere, and they mastered it. I think they're one of the first that mastered it. Um,
Wow.
so I loved talking with, meeting with, going to in February the legal legal I can't even think of the name right now. But every February I would go to New York, hit up
Oh,
the
Legal
at the
Tech Week.
Hilton. Yes,
Legal Tech
yes,
Week. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Are you
I'm
going?
like,
Are you going
not this
February?
week, or not this
Oh,
week.
not this year. Next
Not
year.
this, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's if you ever, it's expensive, but if your firm pays for it, even
It's New
better.
York. It's New York.
Yeah, imagine that. And you have to stay in a hotel. So,
Yes.
but that said, there's like 3 floors of vendors that have the
Mhm.
newest, latest, greatest technology. And I'm just taking business cards and taking their little samples. Typically I would bring it back and, have a conversation with like management and other team members of that level about what can we use, what should we implement, moving forward. And I've been doing that rather successfully, lately. So it's really good, and it's really important because it also makes the cost of business more efficient. So
Mm.
for the client. So if you can reduce the cost to the client by using modern technology, they're
Mhm.
not going to be upset with you about that. You just save them money, and you can actually do a better job, with
Mhm.
the tools that you have available to you. But that's in the legal field. It also transfers into the medical field. I could go on about that, but it's it's important to embrace technology. And if you're a paralegal, you better be embracing technology now. If you don't know it, learn it. Go get a book. There's a lot of free applications out there. Um, that you can train on, learn on if you're in the field, and don't think that you're not able to learn. I mean, if you're an older paralegal or younger paralegal and you think technology is not, I don't know how to do it, so I'm not going to use it. No, not true. That's the future. So make sure you embrace that. And it also helps with the D9, right? So in A, right? So, I mean, people that get it, get it. And you can get it. I think anybody can get it. They just need to have the will enough to get it, So that's what I will say about that. Technology is very important, and it's new, it's great, and it's beneficial to you.
Absolutely. And it helps you, right? So, a lot of paralegals suffer from burnout, anxiety, stress,
Oh, man.
trying to chase deadlines. And you know this more than anyone. And, getting behind on the caseload
Right.
and missing deadlines and whatever, you name it, right?
Right.
So understanding that the more you lean into technology, the more you utilize automation, the more you utilize, calendaring, case management, caseloads, like the more you do all of that, the more it'll help you, kind of really embrace it, just like embrace it, and really help you be a better legal professional.
Yes.
And catch up, right? Because everybody's like, oh, there's no way you can catch. My son decided to just walk in. We're definitely gonna cut that out. Oh my god, yeah, that was great. I thought I locked it, but apparently I didn't lock it.
It's all good.
Sorry about that. Oh, we'll cut that out. But anyway, what I was saying was that legal professionals can utilize the the technology to help them, right? Like I had a guest recently on the podcast, Kat Casey, right? She's a techno cat. Yeah, I mean, you know her, awesome. The techno cat. She's amazing, and she's the best metaphor ever because I love Iron Man too. I think we're having a theme here. And she said the suit doesn't work without him, right? So he needs to put the suit on. So AI is like that, right? It's the partnership between technology and the human. And we need to start embracing that to make our lives easier, to make everybody's life easier at this point.
I mean,
but I love it.
No, I do too. I think it's great. You were saying earlier about, the sense of community. Like I'm originally from New York, and I moved out here shortly after 9/11. But that moment after those moments after 9/11, that sense of community in the city was just what you want the world to be like. I have friends internationally that would call me, check in on me to like, are you okay? The problem is that because the towers went down and the cell phone towers were on the tower, you couldn't get in contact with anybody, right? So it took a while to connect with others, but that sense of community when everybody just came together, that's what we want, right? We want more of that, and I think that's the source of my fuel as well, to see a better world like that. And
if we could just bottle that up,
if we could put it in a bottle and
just like spread it around, just like
sprinkle it like a fairy.
I'm gonna use it like a hose, just spray it everywhere.
Like rain.
Yeah, exactly. What is that that movie? Okay, now my mom's side is coming out. That meatball, it's raining.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. I can't recall.
I don't know. I forgot that movie. Anyway, we'll add it later on into the recording. But definitely, something like that where we can cultivate and really, really, bottle it up. Like I don't know where the lack of humanity came from, right? Because at the end of the day, we're human. We need to accept each other as we are at that moment. Because one hard lesson that I learned was right before I left my 9-to-5 career to go on this amazing journey. I had it out for my boss. Like I thought he was like the worst boss ever. And granted, he was a horrible boss. The way he treated me was horrible. but I didn't
We've all been there.
realize that it was that moment in their life, right? That they were probably going through something as well, and they had challenges, and they were so. It's funny because I don't keep communication, but we're on social media, so I
Right.
kind of see the stories and stuff
Right.
that they've been bringing out. I'm not gonna mention names. I mean, you could figure it out. It's on my LinkedIn. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
say
I'm
but
sure.
I still follow them and I
Right.
still whatever, and they're not the same person that I know from 7 years ago.
Oh wow.
And that's the thing, right? We are meant to evolve, we are meant to change. Like if he was my boss now, we would probably make magic.
Right.
But unfortunately, we both were at a different crossroad in our career, in our mindset, to where it just wasn't going to work out, right?
Right.
I was a recent mom. My daughter was barely a year. She was like nine
Wow.
months.
Yeah.
I was still feeding her. I was still like in the midst of being a new mom mode,
Right.
trying to get this career going, right? It was supposedly my dream job. And they were in another mindset. They wanted to make this multi-billion-dollar company and grow it and at any expense and
Yeah.
do
Yep.
all the things. Amazing attorney, complete brain, graduated, alum cum laude from like, I think it was Cornell or something like
Oh,
that.
my wife.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like an amazing attorney. He was great at what he
Yeah.
did. Don't get me wrong. I will never take that away from them. And I've never said otherwise. Just not the greatest boss, it really, it just, sometimes you don't get both, right? Sometimes you get
No.
a great brain, just not the best boss. And we were at a crossroad, but now in hindsight, right, at 7 years later and a lot of growing, I said, I understand. I
Right.
understand why they were the way they were and why they reacted to certain things the way they reacted. And it's just a learning curve, right?
Yes.
Thankfully, it never got heated or to the point where we crossed, boundaries or like
Right.
we were physical or verbally abusive. Like none of that. I've heard horror stories. So it never got to that point. I left before it got to that point at that, like
As you
I'm good.
should.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm not going there. But
Yeah.
that was kind of like my line, right? Like I
Right. The
drew that
boundaries.
line and
Yeah,
I
you
said
have to set them.
bye-bye.
Yeah.
And I said bye-bye. And Etta Rosa LLC was birthed and it was amazing. And it was the best decision I've ever made. I get to meet people like you and talk to you guys all day, and I
Yeah.
get to help my community grow
Right.
and navigate through those, because I'm not the only one that goes
No.
through these situations. There's plenty of people. I'm pretty sure if we speak to every legal professional out there, they've had at least one
One
boss,
person.
one colleague, one client, something where they're just like, where did this person come from? Are they an
Yeah.
alien? Like, who are they? Right? So,
That's funny.
understanding that at the end of the day, we all go through stuff, we all
Yeah.
got our stuff, we all got our baggage, and we're all trying to just work it out,
Right.
figure it out, and grow. So I feel like sometimes we just need to meet human to human. I think
Right.
that's what we need to do, right? We need to meet each other where we're at in that moment.
Right.
My best friend and I, we have been best friends since she was probably 15.
Wow.
And I was about 17. And so, I'm not, it's only been 10 years. I'm not
Yes, of
saying
course.
it. No, I'm
I'm do
kidding.
the math
But
there.
a couple decades later, and we're
Yeah,
still best of friends. We've
that's great.
never gotten into a fight and anything, but it's because of that. We meet each other where we're at. Granted,
Right.
we change, right? We've changed. She's not the same 15-year-old. I'm definitely not the same 7. I'm not even the same year ago. Like I change every year.
It's
I
true
drive my
though.
husband crazy.
Yeah.
But I change every year. So I come home with red hair. The other day I came home and I chopped it all off, and he's just like, what's going on? I'm like, this is just, it's like the spare of the moment stuff. But understanding that, that's what we do as humans. We
Yeah.
evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, like you're always going to cross somebody that you're crossing.
Questionable.
Yeah. And what I've learned just through my experience, and like, because I'm an intense person, I'm very, very intense. And I learned to like step back, like when they're yelling and screaming at you, telling you how
Oof.
all the bad stuff, right? And it's just like, man, you're really hurting, or you really have a problem. It's not me. It's definitely
Yeah.
not me, but I know I'm going to treat you with kindness and just, step back, because that's something you have to work through. It's not a me problem, it's a you problem. And once I got that mentality, things don't bother me as much. I'll do it, let them talk, blow off their steam, whatever, and just move forward. And then later they come back and apologize, right? It's like, I'm sorry, that wasn't about you, right? And it's like, and I already knew that, but I'm glad you now see it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're acknowledging it, right?
Yeah, at minimum, those that don't apologize, I mean, don't worry about it. You know who you are. So just move forward, try to make that connection. Again, kindness. Just always lead with kindness.
And don't take it personal.
Empathy. No,
I always say that. I always say that even to my kids when they're at school and now they're learning and they're meeting different people and different cultures and different things and different ways of raising, so we're dealing with those complexities of growing, right? And there are pivotal moments right now. I have a 7 and a 5-year-old at the moment, and they're in a very critical stage where they're trying to evolve as a person and trying to test out their personalities and see who they want to be and really coming into their own and asking really sometimes inappropriate questions. But hey, dealing with that one day at a time, guys.
Yes.
And so they come home and there's certain incidents that happen in school and we talk about it. And, sometimes they get hurt, their feelings get hurt, they get emotional. And that's very healthy, right? It's very healthy for them to go through their emotions. But that's one thing that I'm very consistent about. Is like, do not take it personal. They're probably going through something. Most of them speak a different language. There's probably something going on at the house. We don't know the full-on story. So there's no way we're going to be able to, even think about judging them, because we don't do that. We don't do that here. That's not how I'm raising you. You just meet them with kindness. And if that doesn't work, just tell an adult, just let them know what's going on and tell them that it's bothering you and tell them, and let them handle it. Right. But yeah, we're going through that now. It's part of the growing process. And, it's weird, right? It's weird when you're raising kids, because especially when they're very different from you, because when I was growing up, I was so secure on myself. And I'm not to toot my own horn, but I never had self-confidence issues. I didn't listen to anybody. I didn't care what anybody had to say. I was Etta, and I was going to be Etta no matter what. And I always had that personality, right? Growing up. Then I became a mom, and then I became like a conscious one, right? Like, I'm like, oh my goodness, am I doing this right? Am I the mom that they need to be? Like, then I started getting self-confidence issues later on in life. Like, my whole life just was flipped, right? Growing up, I didn't care, I didn't have that. And then once I became a mom, I got so focused on them and being the best and doing this for them that I got lost, I lost my, so yeah.
But I think that's good though. I mean, because as you say, we evolve, right? So I was like you, just confident. And I mean, I was raised, my parents, instilled that into me. Not cocky, confident. So
there's a difference.
There is a difference. But the thing I also learned is because, I was just happy, and I was just like, I win a race and, put the medal up and go for the next race, right? That was me. But if you see behind me, I have those listeners that can't see me, there's a wall of my achievements behind me in my home office. Well, in my office too. So it's like, you got to do that. Remind yourself of who you are. But the challenge, as you were mentioning, is like, because you're that way doesn't mean everybody else is that way, right? And what you learn to do is adjust and try to bring them up to that level where they, stand out and not stick out, right? And they're saying stuff to you that you're like, well, this is throwing me off a little bit, because I'm not sure where this is coming from, what you're saying, what you mean, why you're saying it or asking it. But you learn that it's no different with adults, right? Because you're going to run across people that have a wide range of views. Like, I'm fortunate, I think, because I grew up in the city, is that I was surrounded by diversity. So somebody like, I had a friend that's Nigerian, and they were just, the language sounds aggressive, when they were speaking,
It's like German. I know
Yeah,
my
I was just
neighbors
like,
are
yeah.
Nigerian too, so I know exactly
Right.
what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's not aggressive at all. I mean, it's just part of their culture. And so I
Right.
learned to adapt to that. And it's like they're not yelling at me, they're just expressing something, right? And same with Germans, right? My sister actually lives in Germany. She's now a German citizen. And I go over there. I mean, that's a harsh language. It's like
I'm
really
like,
just
okay, calm it down, calm it down.
yeah. But I learned it, and once you learn it, you understand the culture.
Yeah.
You get it, and like that's what you have to do. You have to be flexible. You have to learn about those different cultures, and surround yourself with that. And if you're not being surrounded by that, get online, get on a community that you can just, even if you're just listening to that, and the way the conversation is going, you can learn. So yeah, it's really good to be flexible and adapt,
Yeah.
adjust, overcome, right? And then you can really realize your real goals, that sense of community that we were talking about earlier, and recenter yourself so that you, yeah, I'm speaking to a colleague who has that same belief of just, you're grounded. You're
Yeah,
grounded,
absolutely.
and every day you get up, you go out and make sure that you're doing your part to make the world better.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you said, and it's awesome to be in the same virtual room with you, and hopefully one day we'll be able to be on the same stage as
Real, yeah,
well.
that'd be
Yeah.
great.
But I appreciate your time and I
Yeah,
appreciate your insight, right? Because this is very in lines with what the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast is all about, right? Taking these
right,
conversations seriously, head on, not being afraid to have them. A lot of us hide for some reason, just hide our emotions and what we
right.
feel and what we go through. So I think this is more like freeing for people to listen to, like, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not
Yeah,
the only one going through this.
yeah.
I thought I was, I special for some reason. I mean, you're special, don't get me wrong. But and it's just nice to have these conversations in a casual setting, not
Right,
having to worry about judgment of any kind. So
right.
thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate you being so open and honest.
Yes.
And until justice is
Thank
served, everybody, I'll be here. Bye.